So let's talk about T.S. Eliot's Journey of the Magi. You've probably run into it at some point, especially around Christmas. And on the surface, yeah, it seems like a pretty straightforward retelling of that biblical story. But if you really listen closely, something's off. It's this strange, deeply unsettling poem, just full of weariness and doubt. And the real mystery, the thing we're going to unpack, isn't the journey itself, but why the memory of it sounds so incredibly painful.
I mean, listen to that opening. It doesn't kick off with hope or wonder or anything like that. It starts with a complaint. It's this stark, totally exhausted voice that tells you right from the get-go this is not going to be the triumphant story you might be expecting. The whole tone is just heavy, almost bitter, from the very first line.
And that right there, that's the central puzzle, isn't it? This is supposed to be the story of the Epiphany, a moment of profound, world-changing revelation. So why on earth does the narrator, one of the Magi who was actually there to witness it, sound so defeated? Why is this memory of a miracle so full of pain?
Well, here's the key. The poem isn't a live report. It's not a live tweet of the journey. This is a retrospective. We're listening to an old man looking back across his entire life. And it turns out it's everything that happened after the journey that has completely changed how he remembers the journey itself.
This brings us to a really fascinating concept called mutable memory. The idea, which draws on philosophers like Henri Bergson, is that your memory isn't like a perfect video file that you can just replay. No way. Instead, every new experience you have, every emotion you feel today, goes back and shapes and recolors the past. Our memories are alive, and they change right along with us.
As literary scholar Robert Kier Shepherd puts it so well, the memory is colored by present experience. Think about it. The Magus has lived this long, really difficult life after that incredible birth. And all the doubt, the alienation, the confusion from all those years, well, it's seeped backwards in time like a stain, tainting that original memory and basically stripping it of all its joy.
Okay, but here's where it gets even more fascinating. Eliot is playing a much, much deeper game here, because the narrator of this poem, this weary Magus, he isn't just one single historical figure. He's what you'd call a composite.
In fact, there are 3 different voices all fused into this one character. First, you've got the original biblical witness from way back in the 1st century. Then, you've got the voice of Lancelot Andrewes, a bishop who gave this really famous Christmas sermon in 1622. And layered on top of all that is T.S. Eliot himself, writing in 1927 and pouring in his own modern sense of spiritual doubt and anxiety.
And here's the proof, the smoking gun. Those opening lines, they're lifted almost word for word from that 1622 sermon, but Eliot makes one tiny, absolutely brilliant change. Andrewes wrote, "A cold coming they had of it." Eliot changes that one word to we. And with that single pronoun, bam, he collapses 1,600 years of history. He fuses his own modern voice with this historical text, and he makes this ancient journey a deeply personal modern experience.
So this raises a really interesting question. If the whole problem is the long, alienating life the Magus had to live after the big event, what would the memory look like for someone who didn't have to go through that? What if their revelation was their absolute final experience?
And lucky for us, Eliot gives us the perfect case for comparison in another one of his poems, A Song for Simeon. Now, Simeon is the old man in the temple who, as the story goes, was promised by God that he wouldn't die until he had seen the Savior with his own 2 eyes.
And when you put them side by side like this, the difference is just staggering. For the Magus, the revelation is the start of a long, confusing, painful future. His memory becomes this huge burden. But for Simeon, the revelation is the end. It's the confirmation he's been waiting for his whole life. And so his story concludes not with regret, but with this peaceful readiness for death, with his perfect, joyful memory totally intact.
So the crucial difference, the thing that changes everything, is time. The Magus had decades for his incredible memory to be eroded by doubt and later experience. But Simeon's impending death, well, it acts like a preservative. His memory of salvation is sealed off, protected from the corrupting influence of a long, messy future. And this is where it all comes back to us, because Eliot's exploration of these 2 figures isn't just some clever literary exercise. It's actually a pretty profound insight into the nature of memory itself and how we all make sense of our own lives.
What he's really showing us is that our most powerful, life-changing memories, they're not fixed points in the past. They're not like static photographs in an album that you can just pull out and look at. They're vulnerable, they're changeable, and they are constantly interacting with who we are in the present.
Ultimately, our memories are the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. And the storyteller isn't the person you were back then, it's the person you are today. Every single day, we are subtly rewriting our own histories, coloring them with the joys, the sorrows, and the doubts of our present lives.
So it leaves us with a pretty big question to think about. I want you to think about your own most significant memories, those moments that really defined you. Is the story you tell about them today the exact same story you told yourself a year ago? How about 10 years ago? And what does the way you remember them now say about the person you've become?